My name is Heidi Hill. I'm the manager here at Schuyler Mansion State Historic Site. Is that better? Okay, I guess I have to hold it very close. And I just am so happy that so many people have come out today to honor Stephen. What a testament to Stephen that we got this together. A very small group of us got it together. Originally, it was Ruth Sentia, she is here, Tor Loney from the library, Stephen Linehan from the Friends of Schuyler Mansion, and myself. But as we went on, like a snowball, kept bringing people into the mix, and everybody came together with money to support this, with donations from the Honest Weight Food Co-op, and it just came together in a great way. So what a testament to Stephen. I want to also say that Ruth was very good over the last year and a half of wrangling us all back together when we got distracted with busy work. And I really think that this would not have happened if it wasn't for Ruth. So thank you, Ruth. And yeah, I think it's really, really important that we honor Stephen. And I'll talk a little bit more about what he meant to Schuyler Mansion in a bit. You know, this garden was very important to him. He was here often gardening. He was sort of our leader during I Love My Parks Day here, and you'll see a couple pictures under the tent of Stephen during that event. We have a number of speakers today, and first I would like to introduce the president of the Friends of Schuyler Mansion, Kevin Richard Morrow.
I'm not a great public speaker, and I really knew Stephen mostly from Friends of Schuyler Mansion, where he was on the board and a great asset he was. I also am a resident just off of 2nd Avenue, and I would see Stephen out many times and would spot him from a mile away because he was, I was expecting to see more straw hats out there. I'm surprised I don't see them. There's one. There's two. So this is in memorial of Stephen. His straw hat was his signature, at least on 2nd Avenue and at the meetings of the Friends. A true community activist in the best sense of the word. Very interested in, he just seemed to be everywhere. Involved with the Honest Weight Co-op, involved here with our garden. And we just lost him way too soon. And I hope we can honor him here today with a plum tree. He was very interested in the Schuyler's interest in horticulture, and we thought a plum tree would be appropriate for this because they were known for their plum, the Schuyler plums. Although this is not a Schuyler plum, but it's close. It's the right tree. So I'm going to hand this back to Heidi.
Okay, I think Steve Linehan from the Friends of Schuyler Mansion would also like to say something. Steve has really taken over for Stephen with the gardens here, and Steve will be heading our I Love My Parks Day, and he's also done so much work to make our gardens beautiful here in the last year and a half. So thank you, Stephen.
Thank you. Unlike Kevin, I'm a great public speaker. So, my wife Nancy and I met Stephen back in the late 1980s through a group of mutual friends attending house parties. So that's another part of Stephen that we've all loved about. When we first talked to him, when we first met, two of the things that he's always been focused on for his entire life, we actually talked about that night. One was his Dachshund rescue, and the other was the fact that he wasn't seeing as many goldfinch in his neighborhood during that period of time, which was another interesting thing on his part. More recently, we ran across Stephen here. more like 4 or 5 years ago. We came to a Friends of Schuyler Mansion event. It was either Pinkster or 4th of July. I think it was the 4th of July. Stephen was, of course, seated at the Friends welcoming table in front of the visitor center with his hat on. We walked up, said hello, went through our how are yous, and immediately after he said, "Why aren't you on the board here?" So again, more of Stephen's known personality. He brought people together. He got them involved. If they needed a little bit of convincing, he gave them just the right amount of nudge. He could juggle multiple causes and engage in numerous conversations, all while most of us were only concerned with one or the other. His goal was to partner. He was a man of 1,000 ideas. Heidi mentioned to me of the 1,000 ideas that he offered for Schuyler over the years. We probably picked up on at least 200 of them and ran with them, which she's also mentioned some of. He was the community liaison, which you all know. Stephen was also a veteran of the United States Air Force, and he epitomized two of the Air Force's mottos. One, aim high. Secondly, Howe. Howe is short for H-U-A. Heard, understood, and acknowledged. And Stephen certainly was. Thanks.
Thank you, Steve. Do we have, is Laura here from the South End? Oh, there you are. Great. Laura Traviston is from the South End Improvement Corporation, where Stephen was the director for years and then a board member.
Hi. As she just said, I'm the executive director of the South End Improvement Corporation, and I think I'm probably one of a few people here who actually didn't know Stephen personally at all. And I think when you have your, memorial, there's two kinds, and one is a kind that's attended by people who feel your legacy, even though they didn't know you very well. He was the executive director of SEIC, and my family is from the South End, and I have spent all of my young organizing life in the South End, and I just knew of him. His name was always mentioned, and inheriting that legacy, it is so important as a community organizer when we carry on this work to have people who have come before you and to have laid the groundwork. And it is such an honor to inherit all of the work that he has done for our community, and it is very much felt and appreciated, and I'm honored to be here today to represent SEIC.
Thank you, Laura. And now we have Karen Edwards. And yes, I forgot the last part of your name. I'm sorry. Who'd like to say a few words about Stephen?
Hi, my name is Karen Edwards D'Alessandro, and it's an honor to celebrate my friend Stephen with you all today. I first met Stephen at SUNY Albany, where we were both undergraduates in the School of Social Welfare. At this time in the early 80s, the school, as well as the National School of Social Welfare, had a shift in mission focus to clinical practice and management of not-for-profit organizations. Stephen held tightly to the foundations of the field, to serve the least of these and to organize others to care and to become involved. Throughout his life and career, the consummate social worker. He exemplified the highest ideals of the profession in his daily walk. The core values of service to others, especially the poor and the underserved people and groups. Work for social justice, respect for the dignity of all people, respect in all his relationships, integrity and competence in the field were values that just simply flowed from him. It's so easy to list his outstanding qualities. He was truly an exemplary Christian. In leadership, he always had the spirit of servitude. he also had an abundance of grace in all of his relationships. And whenever I confessed my screw-ups and mistakes, he would serve up a generous portion of reasons why I likely made the mistake. And when I needed my mistakes pointed out, he would give me that look, tilt his head to the side, put his hand on his chin, and say, "Well, you know now, honey." I was in daily contact with him after graduation working with the homeless. As the executive director of Interfaith Partnership, Stephen was instrumental in upholding the ideals of the Council of Community Services, most notably cooperation and collaboration with other shelter providers and not-for-profit. He was a model steward of funding entrusted to him, and he was a staunch advocate for the right use of resources for community programs. Stephen motivated people for good works. He had me organize a bike-a-thon, and I didn't even have a bike. I'm quite certain that his spirit is with us on this beautiful day, and I'm equally certain that he's involved in all of the best activities and events that heaven has to offer, and I look forward to seeing him again. Thank you.
That was beautiful. Thank you. Well, I knew Stephen for about 16 years. From the moment I landed here in the early 200s, he was here on a weekly basis. He was probably really going to the library, but he would stop here and bring us all the news of the neighborhood. And when I say the neighborhood, I mean the South End and the 2nd Avenue neighborhood. And he was always trying to connect us to that neighborhood, that community, and that really was why Stephen was brought onto the board. He served on the Friends of I also managed Fort Craylow, the Friends of Schuyler Mansion twice. His term limit was up, so he went off, but we brought him back on because he was so valuable to us. He was constantly bringing people here. For I Love My Parks Day, he would bring the Green Tech students who needed to do community service here to do some of the heavy lifting and help us out with our projects. He brought Ruth here, I think, for 12th night. But first he'd ask her, "Is your membership current?" He was always bringing friends and other community members here to the place, and he was connecting us to the community. He always, as Steve said, had ideas for how we could connect with the community. He told me what day rent was due at the Albany Housing Authority, and I would go down and sit there on that day at a table and welcome people to my table and tell them about the free family festivals that we would have here. And I tell you, it paid off. Stephen knew what to do. So that was wonderful. He was always here, too, either scooping ice cream or sitting at that friend's table or helping in the garden. So just a really, really important person. He was our Friends of Schuyler Mansion representative for Parks and Trails New York workshops a few times. And he and I got to spend the whole day together on those events. And we would time it so that we'd go early. These were held up in the Saratoga Spa Park. We'd go early to take in the farmer's market at the Lincoln Baths first. And I tell you, that was way up in Saratoga, but there were many, many people there who knew who Stephen Winters was. So it took us a long time to get through that farmer's market. So, yeah, we had a really good time, and the news of his death was really a huge blow for us here. He was serving on the board at that time. I'm not sure if you've seen the newsletter, but our last, maybe not our most recent, but the newsletter before that featured an article on Stephen, and we would get you copies of that. I meant to before, but I just ran out of time. I think we still have those, so if you're interested, you can call the office and we'll have those available for you. Let's see. As I say, Stephen was here pruning, weeding, replanting, doing all sorts of work in this garden all the time. And so as Kevin mentioned, we do have a tree that we'd like your help with planting. It is a plum tree. Philip Schuyler won awards for his Schuyler Gauge plum tree. He was so stingy, however, that plum tree went extinct. It no longer exists. And I guess the green gauge variety of plums have sort of lost their vigor over the years because all the nurserymen have told us that they don't withstand our planting zone any longer. So we have now a Mount Royal plum tree. It's right here behind me in memorial for Stephen. And we're told that if we take care of it properly, it will bear fruit in the late summer. It bore fruit last year, so hopefully in a few years there will be enough plums to share for all of us. And that will be a nice legacy here at Schuyler Mansion for Stephen Winters. So with that, I'd like to invite you to come forward and help shovel some of the dirt onto the tree. We'll take some pictures, and afterward enjoy the food, the bounty of food that we have under the tent. Much of it is from Honest Weight Food Co-op, and Regina Tillman got that donation. I think she's here. And also the Friends of Schuyler Mansion actually brought food as well. So enjoy that. And then we can walk down the stairs, the front stairs. I should say something about that first because Stephen always said you should repair those stairs. Of course, he wanted to get from the library to Schuyler Mansion quicker than he could by walking up Catherine Street. And I told him, we're going to repair those stairs. We will. I think he stopped believing me. But in 2017, they were completed, and I think Stephen was the first person to walk up those stairs. So that was a really cool thing. So thank you again for coming today. Please help us plant Stephen's tree and enjoy the food. Thank you. Tor, did you want to say something about heading down to the library afterward?
Thank you, Heidi. My name is Tor Loney. I'm the branch manager of the Howe branch, right down the hill of Albany Public Library. And we have more happening down the hill. So after the tree planting, if everyone wants to come down the hill, we have more refreshments there as well, and we'll have more folks speaking in Stephen's memory. So we'll be doing that just after the tree planting. Thank you. Hi, everybody. All right, we will get started. I want to give special thanks to the Windward Duo, who's providing music. And also Sean McLaughlin, who is DJing for us. And I also wanted to thank Youth Effects, Rogue Effects, and Rashid Howell, who is videoing this event, so that folks who aren't able to be here will be able to see and hear this. So again, my name's Torloni. I'm the branch manager here at Howe, which was Stephen's home library, although we all knew him at every branch. And so I wanted to introduce so I wanted to say one other thing. Thanks again to the Honest Way Food Co-op. We have a lot of food donated. Please eat this food. If we run out, we have some more inside and we'll bring it out, so don't be shy. Also, we have Michaela's Lemonade, and Michaela is a local young entrepreneur. She is a youth entrepreneur, and she has made this lemonade and sells this in our community. It's the best lemonade I've ever had. I strongly recommend it. Yes, so please, everything must go, and please eat and drink and enjoy. And now I will bring up Melanie Metzger, the interim director for Albany Public Library.
Thank you, everybody, for being here today. 9 years ago, when I came to Albany and was given the tour of the branches and introduced to everybody, the very first patron I was specifically introduced to was Stephen Winters. And I was told I had to know him, I had to know of him, I had to know how passionate he was about this community, and I was told I had to listen to him at all times. And it became, I had his email and his, doxy email handle that I would see pop up, and I'm like, oh boy, what did we do wrong? And I would, but I was lovingly always brought up to us, hey, by the way, you guys did something and it might not be the best for the community. And that's always how it was approached to us. It was what was best for the community. And it was, I always actually looked forward to those emails. I was like, oh yes, he's still around. He's still active. I unfortunately didn't get to see him as much as a lot of the other members of the branches did. But I always looked forward to those emails, and when I did get to see him out in the community, I always made it a point to say hi, and we always chatted about the community and what we could do for the community. A lot of the emails I got from him were always, how can we connect with the Schuyler Mansion? How can we connect with Second Avenue? How can we connect with any other organization he was involved with, which was many, as you guys have all, mentioned throughout this event. And during COVID, our branch, or our staff used to meet once a week virtually to make sure we could all connect with each other. And the way we do our meetings is we would run our meetings with all the information, and at the end we called it the parking lot. And it was our time to chat and, who's reading what, who's watching what. And the meeting that we all found out that Stephen passed away, that parking lot became our own little memorial. And it was many of our staff members remembering all the many things and how he touched our lives. And so, that's 140 individuals, and he really, almost every single one of them had something to say about him, and it became a wonderful meeting. Very sad, but also very powerful to show how involved and how passionate he was about this community. So we are so honored to be commemorating the bench in his honor here. It says, in memory of Stephen Winters, library champion, and that truly is what he was to us. He was a champion for us, and we will always remember him for that. Thank you.
Thank you, Melanie. Stephen would definitely want me to share that our restrooms are open. I realized I hadn't announced that. So the library is open. Please feel free to go in, and we have restrooms available. Thank you. And so is Judith here? All right. Yep. And I see. So Judith Mazza is from the Second Avenue Neighborhood Association is coming to share.
They're never prepared for short people. Hi, I'm Judith Mazin. I live on 2nd Avenue, and Stephen lives right behind me. At least his house is still there. It feels like he should be there. So I was telling people that in the evening I walked my dog, and Stephen loved Finn, and Finn loved Stephen. I should have had a picture of them down here. But, and every time we go past the front of the house, Finn starts up the stairs because I'd go by and knock on the door and Steve would come out. And he still does that, and I have to convince him that we can't go up there. There's no reason to. And so I turn him around, and he's a big dog, and bring him downstairs. He just doesn't get it. And he waits for him out in the backyard the same way. So I think Steve is very present to all of us in many ways. And I first met him in the mid to late 80s when I moved on Corlear Street and he lived up 2nd Avenue. And a group of us from the neighborhood got together to start the First Ward Improvement Committee and tried to deal with our council member at that time, who was not very helpful. And so sometime in 1991, he announced that he was going to retire and appoint his brother-in-law to the council in his place. So we all got together, and I'm sorry that I don't see Ann Pope here, but a group of us got together with Stephen, Ann Pope, Anita Thayer, and Betty Livingston, who some of you may have known, who lived up 2nd Avenue. She was one of our neighbors. And we wrote a letter to Mayor Whalen and told him that we would not accept this, just appointing somebody randomly without holding interviews and, collecting resumes. And so we sent the list of those 4 people that we wanted interviewed and considered for the council seat. And of course, Stephen was all excited about maybe he'd be the next council person. And Ann was like, you can put my name down, but just make sure that I don't get it. I'm not going to do it. Okay. But we did. We never heard from the mayor. And probably about 2 weeks later in the paper, the council person was not retiring. He was going to fill out his term, but he wasn't going to run again. And that's when Stephen and myself and a couple of other people found Carol Wallace to run. And some of you probably remember Carol. And she was the first one to come up against the system as it was back then. And I never considered Stephen to be a political person. He was always about justice and human rights and feeding people and homelessness, and he was just the advocate for those who didn't have a voice, and he had a very loud voice, and he would not let people not hear him, and he would not let you get away with avoiding the issues, and he was just driven. But he was one of the kindest and gentlest and generous to a fault for everyone else. Stephen never kept anything for himself. It always, his garden went out to people. He'd be delivering food. He'd be taking care of dogs and cats and making sure that they were not being abused. So, and he was, after Dominic Casolaro retired from 2nd Avenue Neighborhood Association, he started the Neighborhood Association, and Stephen picked it up and dragged me into it. You never told Stephen no. You were just, you just did it because he said to. So we miss him terribly, and it's really good to see all of you here, and he would be so proud of this. He'd say it shouldn't be my name, but he would be very proud of it. And so I know he's listening, and I think he's probably up there laughing at most of us. So thank you.
Thank you very much. And Dominic, if you, it's not, all right, if you can come up.
Oh, hello. Judith said a lot, which is how it was. We walk our dog, my wife and I, and every day go by Steve's house, and I still expect to see him outside, picking up the trash or cigarette butts. He'd have his straw hat on, have his carry bag, and we'd be out there every day. And so every time I go by, I still expect to see him. So it's been, a tough last, 16, 17 months. Because I still think he's there. I think he is probably still there. And his social work, Karen mentioned earlier about being a school social work. And actually, I had known Steve before when he lived up Second Avenue. I got to know him from walking up and down the block, and he'd always stop and talk to everybody. He always tried to chat everybody up. That's how he knew everything that was going on in the neighborhood and knew everybody. And so I was running for office the first time, 2001, for the Common Council, and I go down Bogart Terrace, and this old knock on the door, and I can't remember if it's petitioning going door to door, and the old lady answers the door, and she says to me, "Oh, you're back. You were here yesterday. You're gonna come in and have tea again." And I never met this lady before, and so right away I have things going off in my head. I said, "Well, this ain't right. Just who knows who's gonna go in this house if she's doesn't know me from Adam. I don't know her, so something's not right." So the first person I go to Steve. I said, "Steve, who in social services, you got to get a hold of somebody and make sure we check this out." And we found out who, I had her name, and ended up her son was a priest that was taught at McCluskey when I was here in the 70s, Cardinal McCluskey High School. So, and he was in Schenectady at the time. So I was able to get a hold of him. Steve got a hold of County Social Services to make sure that somebody would check on this old lady. And when I talked to her son, he said, "Well, I see her once a week." I said, "Well, okay, but something might happen here. We really got to be careful with the elderly." And that's how Steve was with everybody in the neighborhood, especially the people in need or the elderly. He'd cook food and bring them food. And there was another older lady, Pat Logan, who lived around the corners. On Slinglon Street, she was fine, but then she started having some, dementia issues and stuff, and she'd be wandering down the street, and we always had to watch after. And Steve was always the one, to do that. And he knew, you talk to him, and he would come up to me and say, "Well, Miss Smith over here, she's having this issue, Dominic, and you got to help her out. And Mr. Jones over there is having a problem." And so he was like, depended on him to let us know what was going on. I mean, that's how he was. And we would have some couple differences sometimes, and I get one of those Steve Winters looks, and and like he was torn between either he was pissed at you, excuse my French, or he's saying, what are you talking about? It's like one of them, it was like a mixed look, and you get that look, and, okay, sorry, Steve, but, so we missed that, but it's a long time, and it was a shock when he died, and like I said, I don't think he'll ever be gone from the neighborhood. I think his spirit will always be there, and we still pick up the trash when we walk the dogs, and, it's always think of Steve when I'm doing it, and, so it's tough, but he was a great guy, and like you said, did everything he could. We put some pictures up in the front from the neighborhood association stuff and National Night Out, but he got me involved in a lot of things like United Tenants and other groups that he was involved with, and I don't know, he did more. I don't know how he had the time, but he did it all. So he definitely, like I said, he'll be missed, and I'm glad we're doing this for him. We couldn't do everything in the middle of COVID or anything. So, and thank you, Ruth, for getting this all set up, and everybody else that was involved. It's really an honor to do this for Stephen. So, thank you.
Thank you. And Maria? All right. Oh, I was just looking at you.
We've been a team for so long, even though he's always late. I think we first met Steve in the 80s when he started to get involved with United Tenants, and he would, work on code enforcement issues, affordable housing. He used to go to Washington and with National People's Action and, protest against redlining. And in the 90s, I'll go back, Steve got on the board of United Tenants, and he was a really good board member. He always came to meetings. He helped in any way he could. He was great. And so then he became head of the fundraising committee. Now, United Tenants' fundraising is not big galas or anything like that. We're talking like a night out at McGarry's Tavern and, raffles. So at our annual meeting, we'd raffle off stuff. So Steve was like the super raffle getter. He would walk Lark Street, Delaware Avenue, Pearl Street, getting donations, tattoos, dinners, socks, you name it. And if any merchant was reluctant, Steve would just keep talking. He would talk about United Tenants. He would talk about the need for affordable housing. He would talk about the weather. And so after a point, the merchants would put up their hands and say, here, take this. So we inevitably had more donations than we could use. I mean, he just kept getting them. So, I look fondly on those days. And, Steve was a great volunteer. I mean, and there are a lot of good volunteers, people who are dedicated, hardworking, pay attention to detail. But the thing about Steve, which made him very special, is that he was fun. I mean, he was just so much fun to be with that whatever you were doing with Steve, you had a good time. And, I miss that because that exuberance and joy and just making you laugh was wonderful. So we miss him. Yeah.
So I really have only one memory of Steve. I can't possibly talk this. It's that he was irrepressible. Thank you.
Sorry. I've lost my list here. Sorry, give me one moment. Okay, is Susan Fowler here?
Hello, everybody. So I haven't written anything down, but I was thinking about my relationship with Stephen over the last 24 years. I am the coordinator of the Friendship Garden on Hurlbut Street, and that's my relationship with Stephen. He helped at the beginning when it was an empty lot. He was there along with all the neighbors, making the space into what it is today. And if you've never been there, it's magical. From a vacant lot rose a beautiful place where kids now can engage in nature and be safe and feel loved. And that was Stephen, always helping. I would see him walking down the street, and I'd be in the garden with kids. He'd get me to the fence. We had a lot of talking over the fence. And he'd say, what do you need? What do you need? I said, well, actually, I'm collecting milk cartons right now, or milk jugs, or, whatever little art project I was doing. The next day or 2 days later, there they were over the fence. Like, he always got what I needed, always lent a hand when he could. I really enjoyed seeing him and having it wasn't a huge relationship, but it was like an important one in our community. We both had a like mind where we wanted our neighborhood to feel like home for kids and to be safe and welcoming. And I was shocked when he died. It doesn't seem possible. But I know that he's with us. He's part of the South End community now, and he's in all of you. And I know you'll continue to do the work that was important to him. And I will also. So.
Thank you. Kara. All right.
Hi, everybody. I'm Kara Benson. I served with Stephen on the membership committee at the Honest Weight Food Co-op. And I'm just so grateful to hear that I wasn't the only one that received Stephen's critique. I really thought, wow, I really could be doing better, couldn't I? I thought frequently, and now I realize that I was so clearly that we all could have been doing better. And also the moment when I realized just how civic-minded he was and how dedicated he was and how connected and involved all across town that he was. He was always bringing things. He was making committee meetings fun, absolutely, and they were often filled with volume and food. So I'm so glad that there's food here today. And also impossible things to follow up on. But they always got done. You know, he was like, we'd all be trying to wrap up the meeting, and you know how committee meetings can go on, and we'd be, we see the end of the meeting in sight. People are watching the clock. It's 8:30. They want to go home and eat, and Stephen would do what I've heard so many people say. Well, what if we? And you knew you were going to be there another half hour, and figuring out a new project, and it was always a good project, and it always made us all better. He made me better. He made me a better co-opper. He made me a better person. I remember when two things I want to share. I remember when I discovered him at one of the many places. I knew I knew how involved he was, but I didn't know quite how involved he was, because he was always bringing things to the co-op for us to also support and get involved with. And then just personally, I came to a 12th night here at Schuyler Mansion, and there he was at the table, like signing people in. I'm like, Stephen, what the hell are you doing here? He's like, oh, well, I'm on the board or something. I was like, well, of course you are. And I said, yeah, something. And I like, oh, and he was talking about Fort Crayola or whatever, and he said, oh yeah, she, Kitty married her, and then he pulls me aside. I don't know if he fully pulled me aside, but he just sort of had that way of dropping things that were like, was he talking to you? Was he talking that way? And then he's like, well, Kitty married up, obviously. And then threw his head back and laughed. And then the last thing, so many lasting legacies. I'm just thrilled. One of the lasting legacies at the co-op, although Tor and I were just talking about, maybe are there scholarship funds, other things that we can do in his name, an honor, a membership to the co-op. We could offer a membership to the co-op, different things that we can do. So this work will continue on and ripple out. But one of the really significant legacies he left behind at the co-op that came out of one of his last minutes, is a book discussion group. That is, he said, we should be discussing this one particular book, and we should be discussing it in depth in this community. It was Grocery Story. It was about how co-ops are really the way of the future, and really a way to bring justice in the food chain, in the food service, the grocery community. And next thing you know, we had a book discussion pilot program going on, and sadly, he didn't live to see the first one, but it's now a year and a half, and we're still going on, and we dedicate every one of them to him. And this is just the nudge that I need to really say we need to dedicate this specifically and call this the Stephen Winters reading discussion group at the Honest Weight Food Co-op. So I'm bringing that back to the co-op, and I'm just going to turn to them and say, well, we got to name this after Stephen. So thank you.
Thank you. And Amy and Patricia, I don't know if you wanted to come separately or together, or...
Hi, everyone. I'm Patricia. I'm the president of the League of Women Voters of Albany County. When I first joined the League in, 2013, 2014, I was pretty surprised to see a man on the board. Like a lot of other people that we are trying to change their minds about, the League is not for women only. And having Steve there really just opened my eyes to, yes, we need all voices heard around this. And that was Steve. He was a bridge for us to so many communities. Whether he was, the LGBTQ community, whether he was the South End or his work with the faith community, he pulled us in to so many things that it was so important for us to get involved in. And as others have said, if you tabled with him, voter services was his key passion. And if you tabled with him, it was always a fun time. He knew everybody. He was the mayor, and it was always really just his empathy towards everyone that walked up, and his approach was always so strong. The other thing I really wanted to mention that was, the League is nonpartisan, yet Steve was a Democratic committee ward chair, and I don't think I said that right, but you knew what I meant. And he took that nonpartisan approach that was necessary when you're dealing with the League. We totally, it was in him, as it is in all of us, that doesn't mean that you can't get engaged in politics. It just means that when you're speaking for the League, you're nonpartisan, and that was Steve. He was always that way. He also was really engaged with our SIA, which is Students Inside Albany. He loved the whole working with youth. He helped with delivering as well, stuff into the high schools and so forth. He left a hole that we've gotten new people in, but no one person could ever fill what Steve brought for us. He just put his tentacles out into the world and brought us with him, and it was so important. The only thing I really want to sum up to say is, when I think of Stephen, the word community is what comes to mind. He was community, and community is what we need in this world, and I am so glad he touched so many people, because I know you guys all bring community as well as he did into the world. So thank you. I miss him terribly. I'll let Amy talk.
Hi, I'm Amy Allo, and I was a friend of Steve's for maybe 25 years. Some of it originated with CANA, the Council of Albany Neighborhood Associations, and Margie Skinner and Steve and I were the team advocates for a public access TV station, a facility for the city of Albany, and we labored relentlessly for 10 years or so, and eventually we did acquire a form of that, but it was really the three of us, and Steve was certainly one of the biggest advocates for that. In fact, he used to carry, when we were in the era before we obtained cameras, we would borrow cameras from the Albany Public Library facilities. And these are big video cameras. And I'm not sure I was up to that, but Steve was up to that. You borrow it on a, as if it were with your library card, and then you had to take it back. But so many CANA meetings were videoed with our ineptness. Many of them were, when you look at the recordings of them, they were aimed at the ceiling and the walls and whatever. But we persevered, and Margie can testify to that. Of course, my other involvement with Steve was on other levels, the League. But maybe some of you also know Steve had another passion, which maybe wasn't secret, but he and I shared, and that was for opera. And we went to Glimmerglass together. We went to Opera Saratoga. We went to the Met Opera programs at Cross Gates. He truly loved opera, and it was so great. Well, my husband really liked opera. I think Steve liked opera a lot more than my husband was. He was always game to go to an opera that was new and not. And so when there's an organization locally called Opera Saratoga, which has a program in schools called Opera to Go. And they will come into schools and do scaled down versions, 45-minute presentations of operas, and oftentimes they adapt fairy tales or, common to children's books into an opera format. And these are young opera stars. I mean, they will eventually be stars who come on a 6-month basis or so at Opera Saratoga, and they get involved in these programs that go into schools. And when Steve learned about that, he was determined that one of the Albany public schools, and preferably Giffen, would be able to acquire that. So he went to the mat, and he, through an agency that he and I are involved in called Albany Fund for Education, who actually paid for the $500 for this performance to come to school. But it took a lot more maneuvering to get it into the school. But he did that. And he was so committed to children, amongst the many things I haven't heard people speak about. He believed in environmental education for children. I was involved in a tree planting today, a collaborative event at Lincoln Park, where we planted something like 50 trees on Arbor Day with children in Toast School. If Steve had been alive, he would have been there with the children. His interaction with children was remarkable. It was beautiful. And because of that, I want to present this to Tor. My family would like to have this book, which is about a woman composer. And Steve was a champion of women, believe it or not. I mean, women's suffrage was big to him. You know that, because we did programs here. But this book, which is about a woman composer, Florence Price, who is dead, but her work has become known recently, and children in a public school in New York City, who discovered who she was, and they said, so they wrote this illustrated book about her. It's for elementary school children. It's called Who is Florence Price? And so I wanted to dedicate or give that to the library, along with a disc of Florence Price's, some of her work that has been now come into the public domain and is in a matter of fact. So there you go. Oh, goodness. So that's all. Thank you.
Thank you. That is so beautiful. And so we will add these to the collection here at Howe. So these will be able to be borrowed by the community with their library card, just like those big video cameras, which were also part of my past, at my hometown public library. And we'll do that in his honor. So he'll be named in these. And that's something that we have a couple other collections over the next year that will be added that will be honorary collections. Did you want to speak? Okay. So I'm just going to speak very briefly. And I met Stephen, I think probably in the first month when I started as a clerk at the Washington Avenue branch in 2009. And I knew him every branch that I went to. He was known and loved. And I wanted to say I loved Stephen. And I wasn't a close friend of his, but he was someone who impacted us. And he loved the community, and it was so clear. And to do so with such a dry wit, was so beautiful. And he was, as Melanie said, he was someone who many of us in the library quickly learned to listen to and obey. And he was annoying. He was a nudge. And he would just casually give you work, just in an offhand, and I love that others have said, well, I noticed. He'd just say something that he noticed would be a lot of work. And it was important work. And he taught so many of us, and certainly myself, I also was made a better person by him. And he taught us to see the way that he saw at least a little more. And he was a super connector. And that's the thing I was thinking about too, is in in talking about this event and connecting, we already, so many of us knew how much work he did, but I didn't know the extent. And so even in planning this event, many of us came together, and I'm really hoping and trying to speak this into action that these connections will continue, and that we will, what Stephen would want from this is that this is an action, this is a catalyzing event. And so I'm hoping that we can keep these conversations going and keep the commitment that we share and that he shared alive and thriving. So I just wanted to say, specifically something here at the Howe branch was, one is we're standing in it. And he used to say, that space doesn't really get used. What's the situation there? And it would just be, again, one of those questions, and it would be like, oh yeah, we got to work on that. And so then, immediately, every time I saw him, I would either make a call or send an email, and there'd be work. And so we're in a garden now that has had a mural painted in it that is continuing to travel around the capital region, that has had benches added, and now a memorial bench in his honor, where we've done youth gardening, and then the youth have turned those, made salsa from the things that they grew here. And these are all things that either are directly inspired by him or completely in harmony with what he wanted. And the one other that I'll mention is, again, he just one day a few years ago said, do you want a piano? And he had seen on a neighborhood association thread that somebody was donating a piano and connected us. And we now have a grand piano in Howe that dozens of folks have had free piano lessons on. And that's because of Stephen. So I wanted to thank everyone for being here, and I'm so grateful to live in a world that Stephen has touched so much, and thank everyone here for all of the work that you do. Oh, and we have one more person coming up to speak. Oh, beautiful. All right.
Hi, I'm Alyssa Kane, and thank you. So Stephen was my neighbor, and he welcomed me to Schuyler Avenue when I moved there 27 years ago, and we bonded over dachshunds, our dachshunds. He took me to a dachshund meeting, which was very strange, and I always appreciated that he gave me that opportunity. But one of the most important ways that Stephen contributed to my world was I was the development director at the Albany Public Library when we took on the effort to organize and fundraise and go out for a vote for 5 new beautiful branch libraries. And Stephen, a very important part of that process was a community involvement process. All of the libraries were designed with the community at the center of the organizing. So we had a large community council that met monthly, much to the chagrin of the director at that time. And Stephen was a stalwart committee person. And so when you hear about his commitment to the libraries and his use of all of them and his dogged suggestions about how to improve them, that was structural because he was part of the group that designed and built and imbued these libraries with the love and commitment that we feel to these libraries. And he was key in that. And so the lesson here is that when we live and work and organize and have fun and friendships in our communities, it also means joining those organizing efforts, those formal organizing efforts, that when we're invited to give our opinion and our investment in our world that it has repercussions, and this is amazing, and it continues. So, you know, when you're invested once in a meeting that goes too long, right? You know, of course you're going to have suggestions about what the librarians can do, because this was his library, as was the Delaware and the Pine Hills and, you know, Arbor Hill and Washington Avenue and everywhere he went. So it was structural, and he understood that, and that's why we're all here. So thank you.
I'm Assemblywoman Pat Fahey, and right now I actually don't represent this area, but I have certainly been in the library a number of times, and I've known Stephen over the years from so many different events. But I have to say, I came here today thinking, okay, I was always so impressed with his outspokenness, his doggedness on so many issues, but I guess I only knew a tiny fraction, because just in the short time I've been here, I have learned so much about what he has done, and just seeing so many people with so many different hats. I just want to say, I was just asked to say thank you for all being here. I know you've had a lot of folks speaking to you, but this is really what makes a community. And clearly his memory will live on, which I think is something that we all want. And the bench idea is just beautiful. The books, I love the libraries. From the moment I moved to Albany, we would go to what was at that time called the School 19 Library that we lived around the corner from. And I know how much it meant to raising my children with those libraries. And my oldest, my son, had an extraordinary love of books that he never lost. And I know it was because I could take out a few dozen books every time and rarely had to read the same book twice, except when it became one of his favorites. So I'm sure I'm going to be following up on this with donating a few of those books that we do own. So thank you, everybody. This is wonderful and great to just, it really reminds you of what community means and what volunteering means, and that super connectedness, how much that lives on and how much a difference it makes with this it is a majestic library, as well as these beautiful gardens. So it all adds up, as Alyssa Kane, who is also my chief of staff, she wears many, many hats, but as she just also pointed out, along with the rest of you, it makes such a difference. So it's an honor to be here. Thank you, everyone.
And we have someone else coming up to speak as well. And I realize that after, now please come up. Or should I come to you? Okay. And then we'll keep the mic open, because I realize there may be people who would like to say more as well. So we're here for that.
Thank you so much. I'm so impressed with this microphone, because everybody can hear. My name is Nell Stokes, and I met Stephen back in the 70s when I ran for Albany School Board. And he was right there helping out. And over the years, I've worked with him on several boards of directors. I've been a friend of his. When we go to table for the League of Women Voters, sometimes I would take him home, and we'd get to his house, and we'd sit in the car for the next 30, 40 minutes talking. Stephen could talk. He could talk. He could tell you all kinds of things about Albany. And as I listen to all the people talking about him, I feel like he's right here with us, because you all are with us and you've had so many experiences with him as I have. I loved him. And so when people ask me how I'm doing, I always say awesome, no matter how I feel. So I'm going to say to you right now, Stephen was awesome. And he still is, because he lives within us. So thank you for letting me speak, Tor.
Does anyone else have anything that you'd like to share? You're very invited. All right, and if not, I think we'll have some more music, and please feel free to eat and drink and spend some time. Thank you.